Paul, earlier this week, I was interviewing a gentleman named Walter Green, and Walter is 83 years old. And he reminded me of someone you talk about in the book, a gentleman in the book named Fred.
Mhm.
Walter has the typical things that an 83-year-old would, but the reason I interviewed him is he is one of the most optimistic people I have met in a long time. And as a person who's 83, if I hadn't seen him in the camera, I would have thought he was 27 or 28 because he
Mhm.
had so much passion and rigor for life and for this cause that he has to get people to start telling others how much they matter to you before it's too late. And it made me think about Fred because in Walter's case, it seemed like what was helping him remain as active and vibrant as he was remaining mentally and physically active. Maybe you can take this story of Fred and my story of Walter and build upon it. What does this tell us
Yeah.
about joyful presence?
I think Walter and Fred are role models for all of us, and they give us insight, right? What it tells us about, I think, is the seduction that the society we live in brings to us. And seduction isn't just about romance and sex. It's anything that promises you something good and gives you something bad. Right. So here there's a seduction in the world that's trying to tell Fred and tell Walter, you should feel bad about yourself. You should feel bad about your life. You're 83, you might not live that long. You're not going to live 30 years, right? Feel bad about that. Feel like, oh, there can't be a meaning to your life. You can't feel good about your life and your best years are behind you. This is all a lie, right? This is not bringing truth to us. It may be that, okay, I have more years behind me than in front of me, but so what? I'm alive right now. I'm not alive in the past, and I'm not alive in some future I'm trying to think to. So then these are people who have within them, right? They have a healthy generative drive. I can say this for sure that Walter and Fred are living through the generative drive. Well, I'm 83 years old. Walter must understand. Look at what I've learned over these years. And I can bring something good to the world around me and say, talk to people, tell them you care about them before it's too late. It's something I've learned over 83 years. I'm overjoyed to bring that to people, to bring that realness. Walter's finding a value beyond himself, right? He is being generative. This isn't about manipulating the world so that he has some pleasure and enough food on the table. This is about the best of humanness, saying, I want to live this way. Right. And these are people who are not afraid of dying. We can learn a lot from people who are, say, in their 80s and not afraid of death, and they can find peace. They can have just peace, that there's freedom inside of themselves. They can have contentment. They can think about their lives, including things that haven't been the way that they want them to be, or tragedies, and they can feel good about their lives and how they've made their lives. They have the capacity for delight and getting excited about things. This is how people age happily. So shouldn't all of us be looking and saying, if there's a group of people who are really happy when they're in their 80s, say, or their 90s, let's look at that, right? And when we look at that, lo and behold, we think they are living through their generative drive, and they're not buying society's lies that say feel over the hill and feel sad for yourself and just feel bad and talk about death all the time and lament. The world is telling us to do that around us. And when we deny that, oh, that's someone who's happy, who realizes that he's 83 and isn't pretending he's likely to be here in 30 years, right? But gets it and is okay with that. Why? Because he's aware of the 83 years that have been. And he's aware of the things that are difficult and sad in that time. He's also aware of the things that he's learned. And he's so excited to bring something that he's learned that can change the lives of others. This is a way for all of us to live. And the answer is, how is Walter living or Fred living through the generative drive?
I'm bringing this all up because when people I talk to, especially those who are Fred and Walter's age, hear about Passion Struck, they always say to me, I would say 95% of the time, that's for someone much younger. It's not for me. And what I love about your definition of generative drive, because it really speaks to what I think of being passion struck, you write generative drive is something where more is always better. It doesn't sit on a spectrum. Rather, think of it as
Yeah.
something boundless, an endless
Yeah.
ocean of or the cosmos itself that you'll
Yes.
always be able to tap into and pull from as a resource. And then
Yes.
you go on to say the generative drive is an incessant drive towards goodness for yourself and others and everything else on the planet. And whether that impact is small or significant, it doesn't matter. It always is the case that kindness, creativity, altruism, art, feeling grateful are the compelling expressions of the generative drive for making life better. And what I love
Yes.
about what you wrote there is if you utilize that at any age, because that is what I came to embrace after going through this examination of self that I was going to focus on, man, it has completely changed the whole way I look at life. And it's why I do this podcast,
Mhm.
because if I can live this way and think of life this way, I want everyone to feel this way. Because I
Yes.
think if more of us were living with generative drive, which I think is the point of your book, how much would the world be different and how much of the polarization, divisiveness, everything else that we're facing would go away? Is that
Yes.
part of what you're hoping to inspire
Yes.
with the book?
Yes. The generative drive is a human birthright. Right? We're human. We have bodies like this with organs like this. One example. We're human, so we have a generative drive in us. And that generative drive, because it's the human goodness in us, what's kept our species alive and what leads people to do altruistic things. I think you learn something and you want to bring the news. You want to do something good for the world, right? What you're doing isn't just for you. It's good that it brings goodness to you, but you're doing it because you want to be a healthy, a good presence in the world, right? This is what inspires people. It inspires people to self-sacrifice. It inspires people to great things. This is the best of our humanness. More is always better. More goodness, more human goodness is always better. And it keeps everything else in balance. Like assertiveness, like too much assertiveness becomes over control. Too little assertiveness can be learned helplessness, right? So we want balance in the rest of us. We want our unconscious mind to be in a healthy place. We want to keep balance, our whole structure of self, our whole function of self. We're trying to keep something that's living and breathing, us and our mental health and our structure and function and drives. We're trying to keep all this in balance. The way to do that is to be governed by what is core to our humanness, right? And that's what saves us from cynicism, right? And it's what leads us to realness, right? It's not saying just feel good about everything and everything will be okay. It's the exact opposite. If you approach life through the generative drive, then we will acknowledge to ourselves what isn't good, right? And saying, okay, you know what, I'm doing okay, except I'm interfacing with the world in a way that I'm too irritable. I'm making this up. I'm snapping. I'm jumping at people, right? What is going on in me? I want to go look at that instead of turning away from it. That's how I stay generative. When I'm generative, I can look at the problems in me because I'm coming from what's going right, including the human birthright of the generative drive and the good that it leads me to do each day. So an example would be the person who gets up in the morning and says, oh, all I'm going to do is I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do things for other people. I'm going to check boxes and check. I'm going to be exhausted at the end of the day and I'm going to get in bed. And you tell me how that's generative or how there's any goodness in that. I would say, no, don't fall victim to cynicism. That's all generative. You have no expectation that pleasure is going to come to you from any of this all day, but you get up and you do it anyway. There's a lot going right in you. There's a lot that's inspiring you. Look how resilient you are. Look at your perseverance. Let's talk about why you're doing that. Why you get up in the morning. Is it someone you love? Is it spiritual? Is it religious? Hey, let's talk about that because you're being generative all the time, but you're not letting yourself even feel good about it, right? That, okay, I'm going to be generative. I'm not even going to get any reward for it right today. So I should be able to understand what is going on in me when I'm able to do this and feel good that I'm able to do it, right? It tells us we can look at ourselves and that's how we bring our lives. Maybe that person who doesn't have any pleasure in the day, we say, come on, can you carve out 15 minutes of something that can be about you? Or can you take pleasure in that you're making sacrifices for others? Can we look at what you're doing and why? Is there a time horizon when things could get better? Now we're strategizing, right? We're looking at what's real. And we're only going to look at what's real if we have to have a mechanism of understanding ourselves and a mechanism of bringing change. But we have to be like positioned about ourselves in the right way that says we're human. Our birthright is the generative drive. Let's look at how we're being generative. Let's cultivate more of that in us. And it's just guaranteed we are not steering ourselves down the wrong path if we're doing that.